So in this video I thought I'd do something a little bit different than I normally do, and I talk about the top 5 podcasts that I like listening to. I love listening to podcasts when I'm on the bus to work, when I'm out running errands, just anytime that I'm kind of sort of in between places. Even when I'm at home doing the washing up, it's just nice to be able to just put your headphones in, disconnect for a little bit and just listen to people talking. So at number 5 is Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. This podcast, like, I'm a bit of a history nerd as it is anyway, so it was really cool when I came across this podcast and I found another person who is, I would say, even more of a history nerd than I am, but in a really passionate way. He tells such amazing stories that you probably wouldn't have heard of before. One of the most recent ones he did was about World War One, and it's 6 hours long. It sounds like a lot, but it's such an intricate and interwoven story, and it's amazing, so I really recommend it. So number 4 is Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan Experience. This is an amazing podcast series. He's got over 1,000 episodes out there where he interviews all sorts of people: comedians, athletes, scientists, entertainers, philosophers. There's loads of people and there's so many episodes to watch. Some of the subjects you might not agree with, but Joe's such a great conversationalist, and it's really fun to listen to his dynamic with all his guests. You know, when you're listening to him and his friends, it's one dynamic. When you're listening to him speak to a scientist, it's something completely different. But the conversations just flow in such a natural way that it really keeps you engaged and really, at least for me, helps me open my mind a little bit and kind of rethink and look at issues with the world in a different eye. So number 3 on the list is Bill Burr's Monday Morning Podcast. If you don't know who Bill Burr is, then close this video and go and watch, just type in Bill Burr in the search bar and go and watch something that he's done. If you do know who Bill Burr is and you haven't yet listened to his podcast, it's the rantings and ravings of the inner working of Bill Burr's head. He goes and does a podcast on Monday mornings for an hour and a podcast on Thursday for half an hour. So if you're a fan of Bill Burr, it's a great way to get an hour and a half of new content from him every single week for free. So number 2 is a podcast I only actually started listening to about a month ago, and it's called Your Mum's House. Now, it's by a couple of comedians in Los Angeles called Tom Segura and Christina Pajitsky, who are a husband and wife, and they are absolute lunatics. They have such an amazing dynamic. All they talk about is poo and farting and the issues that the world are facing right now, but it was such a weird outlook, and they're just absolutely hilarious together. They bounce off each other, and it's just a really fun podcast to listen to. It's fun, it's stupid, it's silly, but it's a really great way to sort of get through a run, just listening to 2 people giggle at each other. Then finally, my number 1 podcast I'd like to recommend is a podcast that I've been listening to since 2009, and it's called Yeah Dude. You probably won't have heard of it because I don't think a lot of people have. It's a real cult podcast, but it was one of the first real true podcasts that was available. And it's by these 2 guys in LA called Seth Romateri and Jonathan Larroquette. And they just talk about the weirdest, wackiest stories going on in America. But there's something about that their podcast has been around for so long, their dynamic, their friendship. They get to such real and deep places, and they know each other so well at this point that it's just a pleasure to listen. Again, for an hour, just a pleasure to listen to 2 guys that are good friends just having a conversation, just having a chat with one another. The final one I'll throw in there as an honorable mention, because I don't listen to every episode and I'm not that up to date with it, but it's called Front End Happy Hour, and it's more for a web developer kind of vibe. It's a load of web developers based out in California, some that work at Microsoft, at Netflix, and there's a few other, revolving guests. But they usually take a topic of interest, they all have a load of drinks, and they just talk about, topics that are facing the web development community at the time. So it's a really nice way to listen to other people kind of in my industry, talking about stuff that I'm kind of tangentially touching on. So it's just a really cool way to, get a little bit of informal news about the web development industry. So I know this isn't the normal type of video that I make, but if you enjoyed it, then please let me know down below in the comments. If you didn't enjoy it, please let me know down below in the comments as well. But if you did, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this and more, content about web development. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you again soon.